disturbance of normal mechanical, physical, and biochemical function, either caused by disease or abnormal syndrome or condition, or it could be the study of the biological and physical manifestations of disease as they correlate with underlying abnormalities and physiological disturbances. So technically speaking, ang pathophysiology po ay nagdi-deal po ito po ay nag-i-explain kung bakit at paano po nagkakaroon ng sakit o kung bakit po nagkaroon tayo ng isang specific na sakit. But before that, we will undergo first the usual mechanism of our cells. Okay, so now usually our cells, as what I've discussed also in anatomy and physiology, usually we have our response for our cells in cases of disturbances, in cases of any abnormalities that occurs in our body. Usually, our cells usually adapt as what I've discussed in anatomy and physiology, that our cells, our body, despite the abnormalities, despite the disturbances that our body has, it has a tendency to maintain balance or to maintain homeostasis. So now we'll discuss alteration in cell function and growth. Cell function and growth. So our learning objective, by the way, is at the end of this chapter, we will be able to define cellular adaptive changes, explain types of cellular adaptive changes, discuss causes of cellular injury and cellular changes, describe the different types of mechanisms, different types of neoplasm, and discuss the mechanism of carcinogenesis. And that's all of this is going to discuss one by one. By the way, this lecture that we're having tonight will only be an overview. It is only an overview of the next topic that we will be having. So, and I also hope that you can still remember the terminology that I used before while we discussed the anatomy and physiology. Okay, first, it's normal in our daily lives, in our daily activities, that our cells would tend to suffer from injury or any damages. So cellular injury and cellular adaptive changes. Usually, adaptation is a normal life cycle adjustment, like in a growth during puberty, changes during pregnancy, or aging and stressful lifestyle, which produce a physiologic changes that may lead to adaptation or disease. Dalawa lang yan eh. Kung may mga changes tayo nangyayari sa ating katawan, dalawa lang yan. Either our body will adapt, or if our body is incapable to adapt, it will result into a disease. Or prevention of disease by the body, as what I've said, depends on the capacity of the affected cells to undergo self-repair and regeneration. For example, adaptive changes. So, kaya nga, so ang mapiprevent natin, the capacity of our body to prevent diseases, it would depend also on our cells, on how it will adapt to the injury that it suffered. So usually, these are the common stimuli, or these are the common cause of why our cells will suffer injury. First, physical agent, chemical agent, microorganism, hypoxia, genetic defects, nutritional imbalances, and immunologic reaction. Of course, when we say physical agent, usually it is brought about by trauma, motor vehicular, or a blunt trauma, burn, pressure, too much pressure, like for example, yung mga pressure ulcers na medyo like palagi nakahiga, ganyan, or irradiation. Next, there's sa mga chemical agent naman po, either mga poisons po, mga drugs, simple compounds that could cause damage, and microorganisms as bacteria, viruses, fungi, and parasite. And then hypoxia, it is the most common stimuli, and it is because of the inadequate oxygen in the blood or a decreased tissue perfusion. Okay, kung sasabihin natin perfusion, the definition of perfusion, it is the condition wherein the tissue or the organ will receive blood. Okay, the organ will receive blood from the heart through the blood vessels. So in cases of adequate perfusion means to say that that within the blood there is an adequate amount of oxygen in order to oxygenate the tissue, because there are adequate or inadequate tissue perfusion. So in order for the perfusion to be adequate, there should be that the blood is oxygenated, contains adequate amount of oxygen. And then the next causes of cell injury or damage, it could be brought about by genetic defects. It can affect cellular metabolism through inborn errors of metabolism or any gross abnormality like mga congenital anomalies, like mga Down syndrome, and so on and so forth, or nutritional imbalances. Undernutrition, or it could be overnutrition, causes cellular injury or changes, or the immunologic reaction, the so-called allergy. It could really cause injury brought about by our hyperactive immune system. And actually, there are types of cellular adaptive changes. It could be there is an increased concentration of normal cellular constituents. Like for example, we all know that mitochondria is part of the cell. But in cases of adaptive changes, like for example, hypertrophy, in case of there is increased workload, our cells would tend to enlarge. So in enlarging the cells, accompanying in order to respond also to the increased need of the work. So our cells, so we all know that mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cells. It is the source of energy of our cells. So in order for our cells to compensate with the increase in demand in our body, so it would tend to produce more mitochondria. So there would be many number of mitochondria within the cell, or accumulate abnormal substances, or change in the cellular size or number, or worse, it will undergo a lethal change. So now, what are these abnormal and abnormal accumulation of intracellular substances? So when we say intracellular substances, with the substance or the substances will accumulate inside the cell, okay? So it is result from environmental changes or an inability of the cell to process materials due to the depletion of the enzymes, due to the inborn error of metabolism brought about by inability or the lack of the enzymes to undergo process of metabolism that cannot be metabolized by our cells, thus resulting to cellular swelling. So malalaki po yung cell. And then there's lipid accumulation, like for example, fatty change process in the cytoplasm of the cells, like for example, the fatty liver change, or glycogen depositions, excess deposition of glycogen in organs, or calcification. When we say calcification, it is a precipitation of calcium in a dead cells or within the area of inflammation. Or there is hyaline infiltration, a characteristic alteration within cells or in the extracellular spaces that occur as inclusion or stain histology. So with regards to the changes in cellular size or number, are usually a result also to adapt to harmful agent. And these are the atrophy, dysplasia, hyperplasia, hypertrophy, and metaplasia. With regards to atrophy, atrophy refers to a decrease in cell size. And then usually the causes of this is either it could be, mostly is decreased because there is a decreased workload or the so-called disease atrophy. For example, just try to compare. If you're going to work out now for so long, you will notice that medyo lalaki yung muscles ng braso mo. Pero if after that, for how many years, you will no longer do the physical activity and you will tend to hindi ka na mag-exercise. So you will also notice that there is a decrease in the density or mass of your muscle. Or it could be a loss of nerve supply. For example, in cases of stroke patient, or there is decreased blood supply within the tissue, or inadequate nutrition, or there is loss of hormonal stimulation, or it could be just a physiologic atrophy brought about by aging. Or another cellular changes in size or number is what they call as dysplasia. What is dysplasia? Dysplasia refers to the appearance of cells that have undergone some atypical changes in response to chronic irritation. So it tends to be that the cells would tend to be medyo hindi na siya ganon ka-normal yung cells because of the constant na inflammation within the tissue. But actually, it is not a true adaptive changes because it serves no specific function. It is controlled. It is a controlled reproduction of cells, but closely related to malignancy in that it may transform into uncontrolled rapid reproduction. So by the way, itong dysplasia, hindi siya yung ganon kaganda talaga because there is a higher tendency for it to transform into a malignant cells that cannot be controlled by our body already. Or on dysplasia, it is in dysplasia as well, there is a complete loss of normal architectural orientation of oneself with the next both in size and shape. And I will show you a picture later on so that you can understand the difference from one cellular changes in cellular size to another. The next one is hyperplasia. So this is what I mentioned before. Hyperplasia is defined as an increase in tissue mass due to an increase that are under increased physiologic workload or stimulation. For example, the cells are capable of dividing, thus increasing in number. And then there are types of hyperplasia: the physiologic, compensatory, and pathologic hyperplasia. When we say physiologic hyperplasia, for example, in a moment of pregnancy, the uterus would tend, the endometrial lining within the uterus would tend to increase in number in order to accommodate the growing fetus. So that's what they call physiologic hyperplasia. When we say compensatory hyperplasia, the great example for that is those the bodybuilder, because because of the increased workload, our muscle will tend to increase. Oh no, this is the hypertrophy. That's hypertrophy. The hyperplasia, for example, the great example of hyperplasia is that our liver. In cases of liver transplant, for example, you are the donor, and then there would be a hepatectomy that will happen. The part of your left liver will increase in number in order to replace the lost part of the liver. So that is compensatory. And then the pathologic hyperplasia, the great example of that is the malignancy. That's a pathologic hyperplasia. And the next one is hypertrophy. In comparison to hyperplasia, hypertrophy is an increase in the mass of the tissue due to the increase in the size of the individual cells, not the number of the cells. Hypertrophy, it is the size that will increase, not the number. It is usually response of specific organ to an increased demand again. And then the next one is metaplasia. What is metaplasia? Metaplasia is a reversible change in which one type of adult cell is replaced by another type of cell. It is an adaptive substitution of one cell type more suitable to the hostile environment for another. So metaplasia, actually, it's just only a change of a normal cells to another cells in order to protect that organ from injury. This is the example, no? This is usually the normal epithelium, no? At what di ba, na-discuss natin before kung ano yung mga epithelial tissue, connective tissue. So this one, ito yung mga epithelial tissue. Ito yung mga naglaline sa ating intestine. So usually, for example, this is the normal, no? This is the normal nga epithelium. So kung ang cells rather, if the cells will undergo hypertrophy, you notice that there is a decrease in the size. So that is hypertrophy. But when we say hypertrophy, so you know, if you compare the cells in the normal cells, if you compare the normal cells to hypertrophic cells, you notice that in hypertrophy there is an increase in size. But in hyperplasia, you notice that the cells are doubled. But in metaplasia, as you notice here, that some of the cells are quite tall, and some of the cells change from tall into somewhat cuboidal or medyo shorter na mga cells. And in this plasia, there is really an orderly growth pattern, because normally our cells will really line up a single cell. If they are single cells, if they are double, they will be lining this like this. But if this is plastic, some of the cells nakahiga, some of the cells nakatayo, parang ganyan. Hindi siya order talaga. Because this is the one. Because actually we have a lot of lining epithelium. So since this is a histology, so I will just tell you that there are actually 4 different types of epithelial lining, and then the common of this is the squamous epithelium and the columnar epithelium. The squamous epithelium, usually this is the lining of our skin, and then the columnar epithelium, that's the lining of our So usually, when we say metaplasia, ang metaplasia is that if ang lining ng esophagus natin is squamous epithelium, and then ang lining ng ating stomach is columnar, ang metaplasia, mag-change yung lining ng esophagus from squamous into columnar. The common cause of this metaplasia sa mga stomach or sa esophagus is brought about by the GERD, constant reflux ng acid papunta ng esophagus, thus causing constant or chronic irritation, inflammation within the esophageal lining. So in order that our body or the cells within the esophagus para ma-tolerate na yung acid na galing sa stomach, so it will undergo metaplastic change from squamous to columnar in order to tolerate the acid. So ganyan mag-work ang ating katawan. Now, let's go to the lethal changes. The cellular injury, is yung kanina, yung mga adaptive changes lang ng mangyari sa ating cells kung may injury. Ngayon, mga lethal naman yung mga changes mangyari sa ating katawan kapag may mga injury. So the changes caused by this type of injury are potentially reversible if the stimuli are removed. But there are actually two classifications of cell injury. These are the reversible cell injury or irreversible cell injury. Well, ang reversible cell injury naman po is reverse pa ito when the stimulus or ang nagka-cause ng injury ay matatanggal. It will be removed. Like for example, ischemia. Ang ischemia, it is the critical lack of supply to a local area. It is reversible if ma-restored back again yung blood supply and then there is amount of oxygen supply to that area. Pero kapag late na ang progress, it will undergo ischemic infraction. Okay? And then the ischemia usually occurs in the presence of atherosclerosis in the major arteries. The classic condition resulting from it is that yung angina pectoris natin na major sinasabi nating chest pain. O hindi lang siya simple chest pain, the severe chest pain na naglalast siya for about 10 to 15 minutes. Yan po ang, tapos kung yan, ma-reverse yan siya, babalik yan sa normal. That's one of the example of the reversible cell injury. And then the next one is the irreversible cell injury. From the word irreversible, kahit na matatanggal mo pa yung cause ng injury, ma-remove mo pa siya, ang cell talaga ay hindi na siya gagaling. It will undergo death, cellular death. And there are two types of cell injury. Irreversible cell injury, it is the infarction. Infarction is a localized area of the tissue that due to lack of blood supply. It is called ischemic necrosis. It is irreversible cellular death due to lack of blood supply when the ischemia is persistent or late. A great example for this is the acute myocardial infarction or the heart attack. Actually, ischemia at saka infarction with regards to heart attack, parang magkasunod lang to eh. Kaya it is very important during the time of severe chest pain, time is very crucial. Kasi kapag hindi pa siya aabot sa time na mag-irreversible cell injury pa siya, pwede pa, kapag maagapan siya, pwede pa ma-reverse yung heart attack. Gagaling pa ang puso. Pero pag matagal na, pag aabot siya sa critical time, yan, mag-undergo siya ng irreversible cell injury and it will go into infarction. Kaya ginatawag siyang acute myocardial infarction. And also necrosis. What is necrosis? It refers to cell or tissue death characterized by structural evidence of death. It could be that there is mitochondrial swelling, rupture of cell membrane, shrinking of nucleus, or fragmenting and release of lysosomal enzymes, thus leading to cellular death or necrosis. And by the way, there are actually two types of cell death. This is the necrosis and the apoptosis. The apoptosis, the difference between necrosis and apoptosis is a cellular death, but there is no evidence of cellular death. Parang yung cell parang hindi siya mag-trigger na inflammation. Yun ang difference ng apoptosis at saka necrosis. Apoptosis kasi, usually our body would really, parang every second may apoptosis nangyari sa katawan natin in order to replace the old cells. Kaya mag-undergo siyang apoptosis. But if you notice, even if may apoptosis tayo, even may cell death, walang inflammation because during apoptosis, it will not trigger inflammation. But necrosis, it will really trigger inflammation. Thus, our body will react. And then there are two types of necrosis. These are the coagulative necrosis and liquefactive necrosis. When we say coagulative necrosis, it is usually brought about by lack of blood supply in any area of the body except the brain. Because the brain, it will undergo liquefactive necrosis. And then the great difference of the liquefactive and coagulative necrosis, in coagulative necrosis, the architecture of the cell will be preserved. The architectural outline of the cells will be preserved. In comparison to liquefactive necrosis, wherein the structural outline of the cell is not preserved. Talaga malulost, talaga hindi mo na makikita na parang may cells pala dito galing. Kasi yung coagulative necrosis, if you look at it under the microscope, you will still notice the outline of the cell membrane na parang dito talaga yung cells, ganyan. And then the liquefactive necrosis is usually associated with bacterial infection. And now let's go to neoplasm. And let's go with the definition of terms so that maintindihan natin kung ano yung mga pinagsasabi natin later as we go along with our subject. Neoplasm is actually a new abnormal growth because of abnormal cellular reproduction. It is synonymous use with tumor. So parang neoplasm, so understandable, it is a tumor. An aberrant cellular growth is an alteration in normal cell growth. So parang yung ang difference ng neoplasm, there is an new abnormal growth. But parang sa aberrant cell growth, parang medyo may alteration ng konti sa normal na cell growth. And then a tumor is a growth of neoplastic cells clustered together to form a mass. It can be benign and malignant. And so what is a benign? What is the difference between a benign tumor and a malignant tumor? Benign tumor is characterized by abnormal cell division. There are still abnormal cell division, but no metastasis and no invasion to the surrounding tissue. Parang hindi siya kakalat. Wala siyang chance na magkakalat siya. Pero the malignant tumor is an abnormal cell division characterized by the ability to invade locally, kakalat siya sa mga surrounding niya, tapos pupunta siya sa ibang organ at babalik pa siya. And then carcinogenesis is the production or origination of cancer cells. And then sarcoma, it the malignant growth from mesodermal tissue, for example, connective tissue, blood vessels, and any organs. And metastasis is the ability to establish secondary tumor growth at a new location away from the primary growth. For example, may tumor ka or may malignant tumor ka from the lungs. Usually, after how many months, you will notice that upon PET scan, there will be another mass that will occur in the liver. That's growth originating in epithelial tissue. So that's why. So please take note the difference between sarcoma and carcinoma. So sarcoma, connective tissue yan. Any malignant, any cancer from the connective tissue, that's what we call sarcoma. What are these connective tissue? We have the muscle, we have the cartilage, we have the blood vessels, so on and so forth. For example, if you have cancer in the bone, you have osteosarcoma. If you have cancer in the cartilage, it is chondrosarcoma. If you have cancer in the blood vessel, angiosarcoma, like that. And then carcinoma, malignant growth originating from the epithelial tissue. If you can still remember our anatomy and physiology. So that's one. And then now let's go to the classification of neoplasm. Because actually neoplasm are classified according to their cells of origin and their behavior of growth as benign or malignant. Now, let's go to the neoplasm classified according to the cell of origin and their behavior. So this one, the difference between benign and malignant. So the benign, similar lang ang cell of origin usually, but in malignant, dissimilar from cells. So parang nag-iiba talaga yung cells. And then in benign, tumor, edges are move out wide smoothly. Parang smooth siya. Tapos yung edges ng malignant parang irregular siya. And then benign usually compressed locally and then the malignant invade locally. And then ang benign usually matagal siya tumubo tapos yung malignant mabilis lang siya. And then yung benign hindi siya medyo may mga konti-konti na babalik siya after pero medyo seldom lang siya. Yung malignant talaga malaki ang chances na babalik siya. And then in benign there is no necrosis or ulceration is very not common, and then malignant necrosis and ulceration is very common in malignant, and the systemic effect is more common in malignant. So now let's proceed to the nomenclature of neoplasm. So naming neoplasia is based on two main important features of the tumor. These are based on its behavior of growth or based on cell of origin. So kanina sinabi natin based on growth, it can be benign or malignant. Kung masasabi natin benign, usually kapag nomenclature, paano natin pinapangalanan yung tumor? For example, kung benign siya, tapos usually it will end with an UMA. Add UMA at the end of connective tissue origin. For example, if epithelial siya, so papilloma, or if glandular siya, it will only be adenoma. That is a benign adenoma. Because with regards to adenoma, adeno kasi meaning yan gland. So oma is a benign. So if you join that one, adenoma, it is a glandular origin, but it is a glandular tumor but benign. And then in contrast to your malignant, you will add sarcoma or carcinoma at the end of the malignant tumor of connective tissue origin. And for carcinoma, add carcinoma at the end of the malignant tumor of origin. For example, and add adenocarcinoma at the end of malignant tumor for glandular origin. For example, you can have if the epithelial origin looks like a squamous cell, for example, in the skin or in the esophagus, the name of the tumor will be squamous cell carcinoma. But for example, if the origin of the malignant tumor is coming from the gland, like for example, from the gland of the lungs, from the glands of your stomach, you will, or from the gland of your pancreas, you will name it as pancreatic adenocarcinoma or lung adenocarcinoma. Ganyan po. And then next one is based on cell of origin. Neoplasm are named at their prefix by their cells of origin, and their suffixes are added at the end to show whether they are benign or malignant. For example, these are the cells of origin. That could be the cells of origin, no? You can have the fat cells, fats, bone, blood vessels, and fibrous tissue. And these are usually fat. It is called lipoma. And then if malignant, it is liposarcoma. And from bone, so osteoma is benign, but osteosarcoma is malignant. And in blood vessels, hemangioma, that's a benign. But if you look, it will become malignant, it will be called hemangiosarcoma. Okay, and then fibrous tissue, fibroma. So if it will be a malignant, it is called already fibrosarcoma. So if you notice here, all of these are connective tissue, fat, bone, blood vessel, fibrous. So that's why the malignant tumor is ended with a sarcoma. Okay, but there are actually exceptional naming because there are malignant misnomer manggod. These are some neoplasm that are named exceptionally to the above rule. For example, di ba sabi natin kapag puma lang, benign siya, adenoma, papilloma, the benign. Pero bakit ang hepatoma, malignant tumor sa the liver? So, yun, exception siya. Or but Hodgkin lymphoma, malignant tumor of the lymph node, pathabang carcinoma, or multiple myeloma, or leukemia, even sarcoma, so on and so forth. Yan, sa may mga exceptional na. Pero usually, pero yung kanina, yung dalawa, yun yung usual natin sa pag-name ng tumor. Now, let's proceed to the mechanisms of carcinogenesis. There are actually two mechanisms why we develop cancer or malignancy. This could be only through genetic instability or carcinogens. What are genetic instability? The theory of somatic cell mutation supports the concept that mutational carcinogenic agent and heredity susceptibility can induce genetic abnormalities. And then carcinogens, these are the substances that are capable of inducing neoplastic growth and can lead in the production of the simulation of production of oncogenes. Oncogenes, these are a tumor. These are cancer genes. Because and then some substances induce neoplastic growth at higher doses and some medyo lower doses lang siya. And then there are, with regards to carcinogens, there are three commonly encountered carcinogens. These are the chemical carcinogens, physical carcinogenic agents, and viral carcinogens. With regards to chemical carcinogens, these are grouped into polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, aromatic amines, and alkylating agents. All of these will result into our DNA, thus leading to disruption of the production of the proteins or the oncogenes and the tumor suppressor genes. Because actually, in the formation of cancer, oncogenes and tumor suppressor genes are very important. In cases of tumor, actually, our body usually has a tumor suppressor genes in order to suppress abnormal cell growth, and we also have proto-oncogenes, and this one is very important as well in order for the repair or the replacement of those dead cells that lost in our body. But what happened in mutation or in cases of carcinogenesis, these proto-oncogenes will be disrupted, thus forming oncogenes. And these tumor suppressor genes as well will be suppressed in cases of mutation. So that is why in cases of cancer, there is decrease in the production of tumor suppressor genes, and there is proliferation. Either there is suppression of the tumor suppressor genes rather, or increase in the production of the oncogenes, thus leading to uncontrolled proliferation of the cell. And now for the physical carcinogenic agent, these are brought about by ionizing radiation, thus cause cellular mutation because it damages the DNA either directly or indirectly. So there should be, and after exposure, usually after exposure of the radiation, there's a long latent period that would occur before the onset of the tumor. Like for example, leukemia and skin cancer after the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombing in Japan. And then the last one is the viral oncocarcinogens. Current evidence shows that viruses alter the genome of the infected cells, which then alter the offspring of the host cells. Some of the oncogenic viruses are Epstein-Barr virus, which is associated with Burkitt lymphoma, and the human papilloma virus is associated with cervical cancer, anal cancer, and the esophageal cancer, or the so on and so forth. So I guess that's all for our topic for tonight. Any question?
Okay, Doc, maraming Okay, Doc, maraming salamat po, Doc, sa lesson sa ngayon. May tanong po ako, Doc.
Sige po, sir.
May ano po ba, may possibility po ba kung nag-cure yung isang tao mula doon sa cancer, may possibility po ba na babalik pa yung cancer cells doon sa sa katawan ng tao?
Ano po?
Kung may tao pong gumaling doon sa isang cancer na sakit, tapos may posibilidad po ba na babalik yun ulit sa kanyang katawan?
Malaki talaga yung, may chances talaga, sir, kaya medyo grabe yung surveillance yan eh.
Okay po. Baka may mga tanong po ang mga dito, mga students po dito. Pwede po kayong magtanong kay Doc J.
Hello, Doc.
Yes
Doc
po.
Jen. Tanungan ko about sa yung sa cancer. Yung cancer, may possibilities po ba na na madali siyang ma-cure, o else siguro pang stage 3 na siya? May possibilities ba na ma-cure siya within in the lifestyle of the yung client o yung pasyente? Pag is lifestyle siya talaga, tapos yung pagkain niya is back to the original diet, tapos may sinus. So may posibilidad ba na mawala yung cancer niya tapos na nag-chemo siya?
With regards to the possibility naman po, hindi naman po natin kailangan, wala naman po tayong right na tanggalin ng possibility. Pero with regards to the chances, siguro, pero medyo hindi, the probability that the percent siguro para hindi na sa ganun kataas. Kasi with all possibilities, kung possibilities lang talaga yung tatanungin natin, wala naman talaga kasing imposible, di ba? So, possible naman talaga lahat. Pero the percentage for the survival or the prognosis is quite not that high, I guess. Kasi we've heard stories, but there is no strong evidence yet eh. like hindi pa siya talaga like na-publish talaga na ito na talaga siya. We heard stories. We heard mga testimonies for the healing. Pero of course, we also heard failure eh. 'Di ba? Although same goes with the chemotherapy as well. Kaya medyo mahirap siya na tanong eh. Kung saan ako. Pero with regards to the stage of the cancer, of course, hindi siya ganun ka good na prognosis in. With regards to
Mahina
May
yung
tanong po.
signal.
May tanong po, Doc. May possibility po ba or ang gamot ng cancer ay yung immune system, yung tataas lang ang immune system o palakasan lamang ang immune system?
ano, pawalakasin? Kasi
Yes
yung
po.
Kasi yung immune system na actually with regards to the role of our immune system in fighting cancer, really our immune system has a big role. Pero ang immune system kasi kaya lang niya kung hindi pa siya talaga nagka-cancer eh. O parang hindi pa siya nag-i-invade talaga sa basement yung sabi ko sa inyo kanina, yung ganito kasi yan eh. Illustration. For example, just try to imagine this is the lining of the stomach or this is the lining of the gallbladder, kahit sa this is the lining. Kung sa mga carcinoma kasi, kung ito yung epithelial lining, ito yung mag-undergo for malignancy. Like for a great example for this illustration would be the urinary bladder. Kung ito yung epithelial lining, yung urinary bladder, ang cancer kasi hindi siya talaga yung magka-cancer na agad siya. It will go process. It will go, like for example, yung sinabi ko kanina, space siya, it will undergo, there should be mga in situ pa, o kung sinasabi natin in situ, within the epithelial cells pa yung cancer. So yan, in cases of urothelial intraepithelial neoplasia, usually binibigyan namin yan ng mga BCG in order na mag-enhance yung immune system o dadami yung mga inflammatory cells within the gallbladder, urinary bladder rather, para papatayin ng immune system natin yung mga malignant cells within the epithelium pa. Pero yung problema kasi, because sa ating mga Pilipino, medyo poor yung surveillance natin, poor yung check-up natin, minsan, nadidetect na yung cells, lumalagpas na sa basement membrane. Kasi for example, ito yung epithelial cells, no? Tapos beneath this is the basement membrane. Kapag hindi pa yan lalagpas sa basement membrane, good prognosis pa yan. Kaya nga may mga surveillance tayo, may mga regular na check-up dapat. Kasi kapag lalagpas yan ng basement membrane, pupunta yan dito, kung dito lang, within sa baba lang, okay pa yan. Pero pag lalagpas niya, for example, ito yung stomach, wait po. Kung lalagpas yan sa labas talaga, so parang medyo mahirap na talaga siya. Hindi na kaya ng immune system yan. But of course, immune system has a great role in prevention, in preventing cancer, especially the natural killer cells.
Okay po, thank you po. May pangatlong tanong, Doc.
Yes.
Yung mga cancer pill or yung mga cancer injectables, yung mga gamot para po sa cancer, base po sa mga research, ang iba nito ay galing po sa mga raw materials from medicinal plants. So may posibilidad po ba na ang phytochemical or yung chemical na galing po sa isang halaman ay nakakatulong sa pagpuksa, lalo na doon sa mataas ang anti-inflammatory properties doon sa kaso ng cancer?
Siguro with regards, kasi whether you like it or not, kapag sabi natin, kapag yung sinasabi mong cancer, parang medyo lumagpas na siya talaga, yung cancer na talaga siya, nakatulong siya, pero hindi siya yung nakakagamot. Kasi kagaya ng vitamin C, great example. Bakit kailangan natin bakit kailangan pa rin natin minsan take ng vitamin C? Kasi yung vitamins kasi, yung mga capsule natin, they are formulated in a way na parang may certain doses talaga sa napupunta sa katawan natin. Kasi kapag raw material lang talaga yon, may limit kasi yung katawan natin eh. For example, even if palagi kang umiinom ng kalamansi, hindi yan i-absorb ng katawan mo eh. May certain limit lang talaga sa i-absorb kapag natural siya eh. Hindi yan i-absorb lahat. Yan yung na-realize ko din later as I studied. Hindi siya na-absorb lahat ng katawan natin. Except unless kung capsulated siya, regulated yan eh. The capsule are formulated in such a way na mag-break down, i-absorb yan sa katawan natin in a constant or in a specific dose. Kaya, even it can really help. Kaya nga, with regards to the lifestyle, may nakakatulong naman. I'm so pro with the lifestyle, pero kung i-remove yung chemotherapeutic agent, medyo mahirap eh. Medyo poor talaga. Like for example, yung thyroid cancer, hindi naman yung kung hindi tatanggalin yung thyroid tapos wala kang gagawin nun. Wala eh. Hindi siya, parang ganun. The phytochemicals has a great role in prevention rather than treatment. Natural. Kasi we heard testimonies pero we haven't heard mga evidence talaga, like yung research talaga na they have a lot of patients or top 3 subjects sa research nila.
O kasi po sa pag-aaral po sa pharmacology, lalo na po doon sa mga bago ngayong katulad ng Taxol, baka nakaano po ba kayo ng Taxol, Doc?
Medyo hindi po. Medyo pa, hindi ko sure.
Injectable po yan siya para sa mga may mga lung cancer at yung iba pang klaseng cancer. Yung Taxol na yan ay galing po yan sa isang halaman na hindi ko maano yung scientific name ng isang kahoy na ina-isolate po yung phytochemicals niya at na pag-alaman base doon sa mga scientists, sa mga pharma, na mataas siya sa anti-inflammatory properties, at yun ang nasa parang phase 2, phase 3 na ata ngayon sa trial, at yun ang ini-inject ngayon sa mga pasyente na may mga cancer.
Anong tanong ko, sir?
Ang tanong doon, may possibility kaya kahit nasa terminal na, makarecover pa yung katawan pag pag ma-maintain yung ano yung dosage or yung medication sa ganung klaseng isolated na phytochemical na galing sa isang sa isang kahoy or halaman.
Pwede siya kung matapos na yung trial. Kapag matapos na yung research, mahirap kasi mag-decide kapag hindi pa tapos eh. Kasi lahat naman,
Itong
usually, nasipilit ng mga chemotherapy. Uneven sa mga terminal ng mga cancer, medyo wala eh. Ilang percent lang ata yung...
ito pala, Doc, paclitaxel, Doc.
Oo. Pero chemotherapeutic pa rin yan eh.
Yes po.
Oo, chemotherapeutic
Type
pa
of
rin yan.
chemotherapy.
Kasi iba yung formulation na yan eh. Hindi talaga siya pwede i-replace. Kung yan yung point, hindi siya pwede i-replace talaga sa mga plant-based lang. Pwede naman. Pero kung sa standpoint, I would not say. Pero nakakatulong siya, pero hindi siya like solely. Kasi kung ikaw yung family,
thank you, Doc.
hindi ka mag-take risk sa risk eh. Kasi per experience din sa family namin, nung uncle namin, parang 1 month namin sa trial for the lifestyle, wala eh, parang lumala eh. And then nag-chemo siya pero medyo umimprove siya, ganun. Kasi yung lifestyle naman talaga kasi na-employ siya for the prevention eh. Although yung mga other na mga diseases could be, there are really cases, pero medyo rare sila eh. Hindi sila mas solidify ng evidence natin eh. Kasi medicine, evidence-based eh.
Pero may mga na-formulate naman ngayon siguro, Doc, na mga gamot para doon sa mga klase ng mga cancer na yun talaga ang ginagamot. Tama po ba?
Yes po. Pero sa setup ng Philippines, medyo mahirapan eh. Per experience, mga pasyente natin na hindi naka-afford eh. Kasi yung mga gamot na yan, hindi yan ibibigay kapag hindi mo na follow yung mga specific na hindi ka nag-molecular eh. Molecular pa yan eh. Sisend pa yan sa ibang bansa.
So
yun.
Kaya ang iba pupunta talaga sa United States, sa Amerika.
Sa Singapore, yung iba. Kasi wala pa tayong technology eh.
Mga battery dito.
Oo, pakilaban yan. Chargeable yan.
That's a sad reality sa country. Yung mga cancer patients, ang hirap eh. Lalo na kapag stage 4. Kung stage 4, you enjoy your remaining days of your life na lang ata. Sure na yan eh. Of course, hindi naman i-remove ang power ng Panginoon, pero kung sa medical standpoint, you enjoy na lang the remaining months or years of your life.
So may mga ano po ba, Doc? May mga nangyayari po ba or may mga kaso po ba na nabigyan siya ng doktor ng ilang ano na lang, ilang taon na lang ang remaining doon sa kanyang buhay at nagiging mas ano pa, mas humaba pa yung ano yung extension or yung buhay niya. May nangyari po bang ganon?
Marami naman, especially sa mga may pera. Maraming ganyan, especially sa mga may sulit, pero yun na nga. I'm gonna base it in science talaga. Without any divine. Ang hirap eh. Kasi more than the life, it is the quality of life that really matters eh. Oo nga, i-extend mo pa nga yan. Pero hindi ba yan magmomorphine? Nakakatulog ba yan? Yan yung isa sa mga dilemma eh. Sa mga cancer patients, lalo na mga stage 4, whether you like it or not, it's the pain na na-experience niyan, it's very painful. Na sometimes mag-iisip ka, okay pa ba to, mabuhay, ganyan. Or just to rest. Yung minsan, karamihan ng mga pasyente niyan, hindi dependent na yan sa morphine. Ang sakit ka niyanan. Sobrang sakit niyan, hindi nakakatulog. That's why it's easy to say than done. Madali siyang sabihin, pero mahirap siya kapag nandun sa sigurong tao. If you will see patients, cancer patients, na parang terminal na, nakakaawa. But of course, if having, kasi minsan, sabi nila, medyo parusa din yung matagal ka mamatay eh.
May factor po ba, Doc?
Kapag ma-expose kayo sa mga patients na nagsasuffer ng ganyan, na magsasabi na mabuti pa, mapahinga nila, ganyan. Mafe-feel mo sila eh. Nahirapan na sila eh. Kaya,
may factor po ba, Doc, yung faith na makapagaling ng isang tao, lalo na kung may cancer?
of course, sa Bible, hindi naman natin i-remove. Of course, we do believe na may power talaga ang Panginoon. Pero nasa Diyos niyan eh. Wala yan sa atin eh. Nasa Diyos talaga yan. No one can comprehend kung ano ba talaga yung mas nakakabuti sa atin. Kaya nga, faith is yung complete faith, yung true faith talaga, yung pag-submit talaga eh. Without any question, without any asking, just follow. Kung buhayin ba o wala. Kasi minsan kasi tayo na-overwhelm tayo sa palaging as lang. Nakalimutan natin na ano ba talaga yung gusto ng Diyos. Ganyan. As in,
May
if you
mga
will really meet those patients, you will really understand how I feel about them. Yung makamit ka ng mga bata, na ang lala na, tapos, worth it pa ba to? Of
sa mga
course,
classmate ko dito, baka may mga tanong pa.
ang with regards sa mga sakit, no, sa mga cancer, mga terminal, para sa akin, ang great benefit talaga ng meron kang faith, kahit nasa pain ka, yung peace of mind, yung happiness pa rin in spite of despite, sa nafe-feel mo or experience mo.
Si Doc Arnel ay nag-raise hand. Go ahead po.
Yes, good
Pastor
evening, Doc. Good evening, Doc.
Yes po.
Itatanong, hindi ko lang po kung naitanong na to kasi naghatid kami ng nag-attend ng midweek. Nawala yung aking connection, so kawabalik lang. Pero itanong ko lang, Doc, ang concern ko lang, paano po ba nasusukat ng isang specialistang doktor kung ilang taon na lang yung haba ng buhay ng isang tao kapag may cancer cells? Kapag may cancer po.
Depende po yan sa extent eh. Paano na-determine? Kaya nga, kami kasi medicine, evidence-based practice kami eh. Kung every time, every year, may mga research yan eh. Tapos sa mga disease, sa mga specific cancer, kapag anong stage, may percentage yan eh. For example, 5 years, ilang percent na lang to. Sa pambuhay to, for example, mga malalalang sakit, mga cancer, mga bone cancer, ganyan. For example, 5-year survival rate nito, mga nasa 10-20% na lang. So, ilan ba yan? 20% for 5 years. So, parang months na lang yan. O parang 1 year na lang. Diba? O 6 months. 20% ng 5 years. Or mga iba naman na 80% to. O so medyo tataas. Medyo abot pa to ng mga 4 years. Ganyan. Meron yan sa research kasi kaya yun, na-appraise namin yung patient o yung family na ganito na lang ang months, ganyan. May research kasi yan. May basis yan, ba't sinasabi yan?
Okay po. Pero Doc, Doc. Pero may mga cases, Doc, na kagaya dito yung isang head deacon natin, pina-anoint na kasi na siya, naghihingalo na siya. So nung ma-anoint namin, nag-extend pa siya ng 13 months. Pero sabi ng doktor, 3 months na lang. Nagka-bonus pa siya ng 1 year. Pero Doc, siya, dependent na sa morphine kasi yung pain, parang bone cancer yun eh. Bone yata or...
No sir, lahat ng cancer sir. Masakit talaga sir.
Opo, morphine na lang po, morphine dependent. Malaki na yung maintenance niya every month.
Kaya nga eh.
Opo, mahirap din po pala yun yung
naka-depend
na malaki ang gastos niya kung mayaman ang family.
Tapos
kung ikaw yung
pasyente minsan, kasi I've been a patient as well. Iisipin talaga yung pasyente na yan, yung gastos ng family. Nagiging burden na siya ng family. Hindi natin yan matatanggal sa isip ng mga pasyente natin. Kaya that's where faith comes in.
Kaya nga Doc, kung i-connect natin Doc sa spiritual matter as chaplain, tatanungin din natin yung family kung tatawag sila sa atin na ipag-pray yung isang taong yung nasa may terminal cancer na. Hindi natin basta ipag-pray na na humaba pang buhay niya. Kagaya niyan, yung situation na dependent na lang sa morphine para mabuhay dahil masakit na talaga yung mga cells niya. Tanungin din natin yung family bago tayo magpi-pray. Kasi minsan ang family, ang request na pala nila, parang i-prepare na lang, i-anoint, i-prepare, hindi para extend pa yung buhay. Kung talagang yun, doon na lang siya. Kung magatanggap na ng family. Kung minsan po, yung expectation ng family sa pagkatawag sa mga pastor o elder na magpi-pray, hindi na mimit, dapat daw pala tanungin muna natin kung ano ba. Kasi pag ako po nag-pray lalo kung hindi ko alam. Ang prayer ko gagaling sa desire namin as human, as family. Pero nasa kamay pa rin mo, Panginoon, kung anong plano mo sa kanya, ang pinakamabuti. Tama ba yun, Doc?
Oo.
Yes po.
Above all, yun kasi yung principle ko eh. Kahit may gusto, di ba, for example, ako na nagkasakit ako, sabi ng mga tito ko, ganyan, mga auntie ko, i-pray mo, naggagaling ka, kung napipray naman ako, pero yung like, it's better, mas comforting kasi na isa-surrender mo sa Panginoon eh. Kung gusto mo to, pero may mas gusto ang Panginoon para sa iyo eh. Yun. Mas comforting yun eh. Na kahit anong mangyari, gagaling ka man o sa hindi, you will have faith. And you will assure that nandyan palagi yung Panginoon. Diba? In sickness and in health yan eh. Nandyan yan.
So may mga tanong pa po ba? Kung wala na po, ay hihingian po natin ng closing prayer si Pastor Dr. Arnel Marcaida.
Noted po, Doc. Noted, Doc Aris. Thank you, Doc Jane, sa inyo pong pagsagot sa aming mga tanong. Naliwanagan kami.
No problem, thank you po.
Maganda pala po kung kami po ay chaplain, ay naintindihan din namin po pala talaga yung mga situation na ganyan para sa counseling ba. Doc Aris, kailangan din pala talaga itong mga ganitong background sa mga ganitong medical science pagdating sa chaplaincy para naintindihan natin yung sitwasyon ng mga tao. Lalo yung marami natin na-encounter ay mga problema sa kalusugan. Tayo po manalangin. Mapagmahal naming Diyos na makapangyarihan sa lahat. Salamat po ng marami. Kayo ang dakilang doktor. Kayo ang pinakang author ng science, ng medical science. Salamat po sa napakayamang kaalaman, presentation ni Doc Jane. Kayo po nawa ang patuloy na magbigay sa kanya ng wisdom, ng lakas, sa kanyang profession as medical doctor, sa kanyang dedication na patuloy pong i-train ang mga missionary, mga medical missionaries and pastors dito sa aming school upang mas ma-equip pa kami na gagawa sa inyong bukiran. Katulad ng Panginoong Hesus na ginawa niyang entering wedge ang medical missionary work upang maraming tao magka-interest sa Ebanghelyo. At salamat po sapagkat consistent ang inyong mga turo, ang inyong kaalaman na ibinibigay upang makatulong sa pagbawas ng mga burdens ng tao, especially sa mga physical na karamdaman na kasama na namin bilang bunga ng kasalanan. At bilang kami inyong mga lingkod na manggagawa, tulungan kami, Panginoon, ma-absorb namin at ma-practice namin ang mga kaalamang ito na makatulong sa mga taong pinaglilingkuran namin, hindi lamang para sa pagkakaroon ng mabuting malusog na pamumuhay, kundi magkaroon ng puso at kaluluwang handa na tanggapin ang anumang sitwasyon sa aming buhay. Gamitin niyo po kaming mga instrumento, inyong mga kamay at paa at mga kagamitan para ang pag-ibig ninyo ay maramdaman at maranasan ng mga tao at lalapit sila at lulhatin ng aming Ama sa langit at sila po ay mahanda rin sa malapit ng pagbabalik ng aming Panginoon. Salamat po sa aming pong school at sa mga effort ng aming mga professors, administrators at mga classmates namin na umattend ngayong gabi. Salamat din po sa iyong pagdinig sa iyong panalangin sa pangalan ng aming Panginoong Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Maraming salamat, Doc J.
Thank you po. Thank you.
Maraming salamat po.
Good night.
You po, Doc.
Thank you.
Laila to mga kapatid.
Dahil ito.
Yes po.